This is my video update on this Wednesday, midday, February the 28th. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off once again with Macron and the statement that he made yesterday calling on collective West countries to put boots on the ground in Ukraine in order to prevent Russia from winning the conflict in Ukraine. And Macron made the statement at an event that he was hosting in Paris, where he invited 20 leaders of EU collective West countries to attend this event, where they discussed the conflict in Ukraine. Really, what they were discussing was the collapse of the Ukraine project. But at this event, Macron, he said that collective West countries need to put boots on the ground in Ukraine in order to fight the Russians. And since Macron made that comment, calling on collective West countries to go to war with Russia, we have had just about every collective West country come out and say that they are not going to put boots on the ground in Ukraine. They are not going to go to war with Russia, which is what Macron was essentially calling for. And the United States, the UK, Germany, Stoltenberg, NATO, just about every country in the collective West that has been funding and fueling this proxy war with Russia, they came out and they said, no, we are not going to send our military to Ukraine in order to fight Russia. But the Prime Minister of France, Mr. Attal, who is kind of the mini Macron, he's Macron's mini-me. He walks like Macron, he talks like Macron, he dresses like Macron. He's like a younger version of Macron. The newly appointed Prime Minister Attal, who has been chosen to become the president of France in 2027. Anyway, the Prime Minister, he came out in support of Macron. He said that you can't rule anything out in a war. That is what Prime Minister Attal said. You can't rule anything out in a war, as if France is openly participating in this war with Russia. That's kind of how this statement sounds. France is a participant in this war. That is what Attal seems to be saying or suggesting. You cannot rule anything out in a war. Is this France's war? We know that this is France's proxy war, that we know. But is this France's hot war? Anyway, that is what Attal said in his statement in support of Macron's suggestion to send collective West troops into Ukraine. Now, the Kremlin, they have responded to Macron's statement, and Peskov was asked about a direct conflict with NATO. What happens if European countries, if collective West countries do send their military into Ukraine? And Peskov said, in this case, we have to talk not about the probability, but rather the inevitability of a war with NATO. So that was the Kremlin's response to Macron's statement. Now, the Financial Times, they were covering this event in Paris, and they said that Macron made this statement in order to scare Russia, in order to pressure Russia, actually, is what the Financial Times is reporting. Macron's statement about sending in troops was an attempt to put pressure on Russia. So I'm not sure how pressured or how worried Russia is about this statement from Macron. But as I said in yesterday's video, Russia is prepared for a NATO intervention into Ukraine. And they have hundreds of thousands of troops in reserve, anticipating that when things really start to go bad for Project Ukraine, that NATO is going to panic and that they may actually send in troops into Ukraine. And so for Russia, they are anticipating this. They have been preparing for this, and they are prepared for a conflict with NATO, though Putin has said many times this is not what Russia wants, but they are prepared. Anyway, that is the statement from Peskov. And Politico, covering this story, covering this event in Paris and these statements from Macron, they put out an article with the title, Scholz and Macron Feud over Arms for Ukraine. As Ukraine runs short on ammunition, the German and French leaders are at odds over military aid. And in this article from Politico, they highlight the fact that Scholz has been dovish with regards to Project Ukraine, while Macron is hawkish. Scholz doesn't want to send Taurus missiles to Ukraine. He doesn't want to escalate, this is according to Politico, he doesn't want to escalate the conflict in Ukraine out of fears of a direct conflict with Russia, Germany at war with Russia. Out of these fears, Scholz has been reluctant to escalate, while Macron is the opposite. Macron wants to escalate. He wants more weapons sent to Ukraine. He wants NATO and the French military and EU nations to send their troops into Ukraine. And he is pushing for more and more escalations. And the two leaders, they find themselves at odds with one another. But Politico, they are actually making the claim, and I think this is correct, that Macron, by saying that that the collective West needs to put boots on the ground in Ukraine, just by putting it out there, he's shifted the discussion to actual intervention, collective West intervention into Ukraine. It's no longer taboo to talk about this. And that seems to be the overall purpose for Macron saying what he said. So it's out there now. It's on the table now. Yes, for now, every country in the collective West said, no, we are not sending troops into Ukraine. But Politico is arguing that, yeah, for now, you're not going to put boots on the ground in Ukraine. But you said the same thing 2 years ago with tanks and long-range missiles and HIMARS and drones and all of these things. So let me read you what Politico is saying, and they're quoting Macron in this reporting. Many of the people who say never, never today were the same people who said never, never tanks, never, never planes, never, never long-range missiles, never, never this 2 years ago, Macron said, in a clear reference to Germany's widely ridiculed offer just before the onset of Russia's invasion of Ukraine to send 5,000 helmets. Macron added, I remind you that 2 years ago, many around the table said, we will offer sleeping bags and helmets. And Macron is right here. I mean, this is true. 2 years ago, Germany said, we're only going to offer sleeping bags and 5,000 helmets. And we ended up with Leopard tanks. And now they're talking about Taurus missiles. And I imagine that sooner or later, Scholz will cave and he will green light Taurus missiles to Ukraine. But, Macron he's shifted the Overton window. Is that the correct phrase? Is that the correct expression? He really has shifted the narrative now to discussing boots on the ground in Ukraine. And everyone is shocked. Like all of the citizens of the collective West are shocked and horrified. And many leaders, I imagine, of the collective West are shocked and horrified, or at least they're play acting to be shocked and horrified. But this is being discussed. Duda was at this meeting, and he said that this is being discussed. Cameron was there at this event. Everyone that was at this event, they are saying, yeah, this is being discussed. Robert Fico, he said absolutely that the collective West and NATO, they are panicking and they're getting nervous because Project Ukraine is collapsing. It's collapsing very quickly, and they're discussing about some sort of incursion or intervention of NATO into Ukraine. But without the United States, none of this works. Without the U.S., there's no way that any country in Europe can intervene in Ukraine. So, Macron, he's put it out there now, and he's making the point that, yeah, you all may think I'm crazy now that I'm saying let's go to war with Russia, because that is what Macron is saying. Let's go to war with Russia. We all know that there are collective West troops in Ukraine. We all know that. And I'll get to that in a bit, because the FT is reporting on the presence of Western troops in Ukraine. But it's been done on the quiet, on the down low, right? We don't talk about it. Let's not talk about it. The collective West is not a party to this war. That's been the mantra for the last 2 years. We're not a party to this war. We're not involved in this war. We're just giving money and weapons and training and mercenaries and all of these things to Ukraine in order to fight Russia for democracy, or in order to prevent Putin from invading the United Kingdom or Spain, or whatever narrative they're throwing out there. But Macron is saying 2 years ago, you all were saying that it was only going to be blankets and helmets. And now we're talking about ATACMS, F-16s, and possibly Taurus missiles. So Politico kind of gives the game away. Macron kind of gives the game away. As they panic, these collective West leaders, you don't know what they're capable of doing. But anyway, that is what Macron said. The response from collective West countries as of now is no way. But 2 years ago it was also no way. We're not going to send tanks, and we're not going to send HIMARS and drones and missiles. And look where we are today. So we should not panic, but we should be concerned at the fact that Macron is putting this on the table, and that is what Politico is saying as well. Now, the Financial Times, they are actually reporting that they interviewed an anonymous collective West official, and this official said to the Financial Times, yeah, Western special forces are unofficially fighting in Ukraine. According to the Financial Times, everyone knows that there are Western special forces in Ukraine. They just haven't officially recognized it, this source said. Western special forces from an unnamed country are already in Ukraine, about whom the Western public is not officially informed. One of the high-ranking European officials told reporters about this, commenting on Macron's words about sending troops to Ukraine. So I wonder if this country that is unnamed, that is very much bogged down in Ukraine, is France. That would be my guess. My guess is that France, out of all of the countries in the collective West, I would say that France, Poland, the UK, and the US are probably the most involved on the ground in Ukraine, unofficially, as the Financial Times is saying. So yeah, those were the events of yesterday. We really have seen a shift now in the conversation, in the dialogue, and I think this is important to point out. We're no longer talking about a proxy war. We're no longer talking about just money, or we're going to supply weapons to the Ukraine military. Macron has shifted things. We're now talking openly about collective West involvement in this conflict, and Ukraine is collapsing. Ukraine is absolutely collapsing, and the Russians are advancing, and they're not even on the offensive. And if you're Elensky and your military is collapsing, the front lines are collapsing. Russia is advancing, and they're taking over village after village, town after town. They're now moving towards. It appears they're moving towards Chasov Yar, and there's a lot of worry about Kupiansk, and there's a lot of concern about Kharkiv. So if all of this is happening and you're Elensky, what do you do? Well, you go on a road trip. Road trip, right? That's what Elensky always does when things are looking really bad in Kiev. So Elensky got on a plane and he traveled to Saudi Arabia. That was his first stop. So he goes to Saudi Arabia and he meets with MBS. They put out a very slick, well-produced video of Zelensky in Saudi Arabia meeting with MBS. Is Zelensky looking for money? Yeah. Is Zelensky looking for weapons? Possibly, but something else may be going on here, because there are reports that Abramovich's plane also landed in Saudi Arabia. Now, Abramovich, the one-time owner of Chelsea, the billionaire Russian oligarch who was expelled from the UK, kind of expelled from the UK, chased out of the UK. Well, he was involved in the negotiations that took place in 2022. I believe he was actually in Turkey when those negotiations were taking place. And rumor has it, the reports say that he was a big part in these negotiations. He played a big role in trying to get to some sort of a ceasefire. Those are just what the rumors were reporting back in 2022. Anyway, his plane, the reports are that his plane has also landed in Saudi Arabia, or was in Saudi Arabia at the same time that Elensky was in Saudi Arabia, meeting with, or trying to get a meeting with MBS. And we know that Saudi Arabia, I believe Saudi Arabia in the past, well, they have definitely been involved. They played a big part in many of the prisoner exchanges. I believe way back in 2022, when the special military operation got underway, Saudi Arabia was trying to broker a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. So here we are with Zelensky landing in Saudi Arabia, Abramovich also in Saudi Arabia, Ukraine collapsing, Macron talking about war with Russia, and possibly something is going on in Riyadh. We're going to have to wait and see if we get any more news as to what these meetings were about. And after Saudi Arabia, Elensky, he made his way over to Albania to take part in the second annual Balkan-Ukraine Summit. And at this event, no doubt about it, Elensky is going to beg for money and for weapons. That is why Elensky is going to this Balkan-Ukraine Summit. So, things are collapsing in Kiev, and Elensky does what he always does. When things collapse, he gets out of town. He gets on a plane and goes on a road trip. Eventually, he returns back to Kiev when things have settled down a bit. Janet Yellen, by the way, she was making some interesting statements about how it's absolutely necessary for countries in the collective West, actually all around the world, to transfer frozen Russian assets to Ukraine. Quote, "It is necessary and urgent for our coalition to find a way to unlock the value of these immobilized assets." An interesting statement from Yellen, huh? This is the Treasury Secretary. Let's get frozen assets to Ukraine so we can further degrade the U.S. financial system, so we could further further destroy the dollar, trust in the dollar, and trust in the collective West financial system. This is coming from your Treasury Secretary. Anyway, that is the comment from Yellen and Politico. They also put out an article with the title, Elensky allows foreigners to serve in Ukraine's National Guard. Kiev is desperate for more soldiers. That is what this article from Politico is saying, which is an interesting article. It comes out at an interesting time during this conflict because just the other day, Elensky was saying that Ukraine has only suffered 31,000 KIAs in the entire 2 years of this conflict. So something doesn't add up. Politico is saying Kiev is desperate for more soldiers. Elensky just 2 days ago said we've suffered much lower casualties than many collective West analysts and the media are reporting. The New York Times had the number at 70,000. Elensky came out and said 31,000, and now we have, and everyone was like, what kind of number is Zelensky throwing out there? This is much lower than what the U.S. and what the New York Times was reporting with regards to Ukraine casualties and KIAs. And now you have Politico saying, well, Kiev is desperate for more soldiers. And towards the end of, I don't know what that noise is, by the way. I have no idea, but let's move a little over here, a little further away from that noise. But towards the end of this Politico article, they say, as a new wave of mobilization looms, Ukraine is desperate for more soldiers to replenish the military losses and allow the exhausted frontline troops to recuperate. So Ukraine is desperate to replenish the losses, which are, according to Elensky, 31,000. As mobilization looms, according to Politico. So yesterday we had a GOP and I believe also a Democrat primary in Michigan, where Trump won. He beat out neocon Nikki Haley. No surprise there. Something like 70% of the vote went to Trump and 27 to Haley or something like that. And that's not the interesting part about what happened in Michigan yesterday. The interesting part about the vote in Michigan comes from the Democrat Party side of things, because let me pull up an article from Newsweek. Joe Biden suffered a loss in Dearborn, Michigan. According to Newsweek, Joe Biden loses to uncommitted in Dearborn, Michigan by over 1,000 votes. A majority of Democrat residential primary voters in Dearborn, Michigan voted uncommitted over President Biden in protest of his handling of Israel's war in Gaza, with 47 out of the city's 48 precincts reporting results. The uncommitted vote in Dearborn was 56%, while Biden had received 40%, according to results posted in the city clerk's website. A robust campaign called Listen to Michigan began just a few weeks ago to encourage voters to select uncommitted as a way to pressure Biden to demand a permanent ceasefire. Almost 30,000 Palestinians have died in Gaza since Israel launched its offensive after Hamas' October 7th attack, the Associated Press reported, citing Palestinian health officials. So the Newsweek is reporting that Biden lost to uncommitted in Dearborn, Michigan. Not a good sign for Biden if he does become the Democrat candidate for the 2024 election. Michigan is not looking good for Biden, and Michigan is a key state in the 2024 election. So that is the reporting from Newsweek, and let's do a quick clown world. And we are going to head over to the UK tabloids, the UK tabloids, the Sunday Sport, which is reporting Brit spies steal Putin's Taylor Swift sex doll. MI6 hailed for audacious raid. So bravo to the MI6. They managed to steal Putin's Taylor Swift doll, his sex doll. Oh, boy. The UK tabloids. All right. That's the video, everybody. No comment. That's the video. The Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop. 15% off all T-shirts. And this story from the UK tabloids was posted on my Telegram channel. And when I saw this cover, I commented on Telegram. I thought that Taylor Swift sex dolls were on the sanctions list. How did Putin get one of these Taylor Swift dolls? They've circumvented the sanctions, and they got these Taylor Swift dolls to Putin. Crazy stuff, man. Crazy stuff. All right, that is the video, everybody. Take care.